Once upon a time, I used to be the girl. I used to be the nice girl who followed the rules, said yes to everything, and put everyone else's happiness before my own. But I did not get the same treatment or better in return until all of that bad experience brought me to a place where I had to ask the uncomfortable questions many of you are asking yourself right here in this season. Why is life so unfair to me, even though I am a good person? Why can't I get the love, the faithfulness, the devotion, the passion, the respect from others that I give to them wholeheartedly? Why do I almost never get the things I desire from people? And that is a question that I'm going to answer for you guys in a moment. But before I answer that question, I have to show you guys a verse from the Bible. In the book of Matthew, chapter 10, verses 16. This is basically Jesus saying to his 12 disciples after he saw the state of God's own people in the world at that time. So he said to his disciples in chapter 10, verses 16, "Listen, I am sending you out just like sheep to a pack of wolves. You must be as cautious as snakes and as gentle as doves." You must be as cautious as snakes and as gentle as doves. Another translation says something like, be wise as serpents. So something like that. So I thought it was quite interesting that, the Bible is basically telling us, Jesus in this context is basically telling us that, see, I am sending you guys out as sheep, but you ought to be wise as serpents, which basically brings me to the concept of dark femininity. So this is a concept that is not very common, is not very commonly taught in Christianity, like even in churches, like they don't really teach the concept of the warrior side of being a believer. So they mostly teach the side of, being gentle and humble, like being the perfect vessel that God can communicate with. They rarely talk about like the making and the psychology that goes behind being, a formidable Christian person in the world of today. And that is where I am introducing the concept of dark femininity. So to answer the question that I asked, the question of why you still get all of those uncomfortable treatments or all those unexpected or completely opposite treatments from people that you give to them is because you are not yet tapped into your dark femininity. And that is what I'm going to talk about in today's video. That is a concept I'm going to teach you guys in today's video, because basically when you are the nice girl, when you're not in your dark femininity, when you haven't activated your dark femininity, or you're not walking in the consciousness of your dark femininity, you are a sheep to the world. And one might think, what is so bad about being a sheep? Right? So religious houses, they teach us to be sheep. They teach us to be humble and lowly and long-suffering and all of that. And rarely do they teach us how to be on the offensive side, how to be cautious, how to be wise as serpents. The translation I read to you guys is the Good News translation. The other translation that says be wise as serpents is actually my favorite translation, right? So this is a Bible, this is like one of my favorite Bible verses, and it is a Bible verse that I have, I've always known, like I've understood it for a very long time. One of the things that just confused me is, how that it's not being taught very often in the church. So the Bible verse that talks about being wise and as cautious as serpents is the interesting part. So that is a metaphor. To be wise as something is a metaphor. And how I read it, or what I really feel like that verse is talking about in depth, is that, in order to be as wise as something, you need to learn about that thing. You need to know its character, its trait, and you need to be so aware of it, because that's the only way you can be as that thing is. So that suggests to me that it is saying that we ought to learn the ways of this animal that has such profound mastery of the world, of human nature. You know, it's so cunning because it's that flexible. It understands the reality of its environment, right? So it is not a naive animal. It is an animal that has a profound understanding of its environment. And because of that understanding, because of that experience that it has, because of that knowledge, that uncommon knowledge that is not commonly taught in our churches, in our houses, that this animal has, that is what gives it that advantage. That is why in Asian tribes, in Asian cultures, snakes are being associated with wisdom, and in the Bible we can see that it's also being used, like wisdom is, being attributed to the quality of a serpent. And the Bible here is telling us to be as cautious as snakes, right? Like, you have no excuse to be naive, right? So you don't have any excuse. Yes, you are sent to the world as a sheep. You are sent to the world as a sheep, but you ought to be,
and you ought to move through the world like a snake.
Let me read that verse again. I am sending you out just like sheep. You're sent to the world like a sheep. So that suggests, the word like suggests that we are to be in the likeness of a sheep. So our true identity is to be a sheep. So that is how God intends to send us out to the world. Because, if you know anything about sheep are very, they're basically followers. There is nothing interesting or intimidating about them because they're very good at only one thing, and that is in following. They're very good at following a shepherd or anyone that looks like a shepherd. So sheep are followers. That is the only interesting thing about them, right? So Jesus is telling us here that he is sending us to the world like a sheep. So we ought to be in the likeness of a sheep while responding to the instruction, to the command of Jesus in, going out to the world. But here is where it got a little different. But you must be as cautious as snakes. So to be as cautious as snakes is suggesting that we ought to learn the ways of the snakes, and we ought to what's the word I can use to describe this? We ought to employ the skills, the tactic of a snake in surviving the world, like the realm that we are operating in. So that, to me, is basically how I define dark femininity. So I know a lot of people are already thinking, well, you're Christian. Why are you talking about dark femininity? Is that a thing? All of that. So this is how I define dark femininity. So in this channel, my content pillars mostly focuses on beauty and femininity. And in today's femininity class, we're talking about a different aspect. It's not so different, right? But this is like a second aspect of femininity that is so important for us to know, which is a dark femininity. And basically, dark femininity only, it describes, the woman who has embraced the cautious side of hers, like the woman who has understood her boundaries and her powers, and she knows how to exercise it in the world. So that is what today's video is going to be focused on. Is going to be focused on awakening your dark femininity. So I don't know if I'm going to turn this into a series, but for today's video, we're mostly going to talk about the first aspect of mastering our dark femininity as women. We all have desires. We all have things we want to achieve in this world. We also have things that we want to get from the world. And the truth of the matter is, as a woman, or even as a man, but this video is specifically about women and femininity. As a woman, you can never get what you want in this world, and you can never protect yourself. You can never survive the system of this world if you remain in that light feminine energy. Now, the light feminine energy here is like being in your sheep consciousness. So you can never get everything done. So I am not saying that being in the ship consciousness is a weak side of you. No, it is a form of strength. To be in your sheep form or your sheep consciousness, which is the light femininity, is also a kind of strength. But it is a kind of strength for a particular time and a particular place, right? So when we are with God, when we are communing with God, when we're communicating with God, when we are in relation with God, being in our light feminine side is the best form, is the best posture that allows us to be able to relate and get things from God, or like really connect with God and connect with the Holy Spirit. But when you're out in the world executing your assignment, or you're out in the world trying to make a way, trying to protect, or even just surviving alone, we're not even talking about being on the offensive side, because the current world we're living in is structured in a way that it attacks everyone. Like, everyone is under attack. There is a spiritual warfare going on. So nobody, not even a newborn baby, is completely free of the attack of the system of this world. So there is need for us to tap into that dark femininity. There is need for us to master our dark femininity and learn to awaken it, so that we are able to achieve what we need to achieve in this world, and we are able to basically survive this world.
whilst preserving our divine feminine essence. And this is the whole point of activating the dark feminine aspect of our femininity.
So, number one, you need to consciously rewire your brain by telling it a different story every time you catch yourself operating in a nice girl mindset. So this is like my favorite part of the deprogramming aspect of the nice girl mindset. So how do you do this? You need to first of all identify and understand your nice girl habits. Identify and understand your nice girl habits. And you need to develop a dark feminine story to counter or to deprogram that mindset. For example, one of my former nice girl habits was expecting that people would be nice to me when I am nice to them first. I remember when I just newly moved into this city. That was about 4 years ago now. So I was new in this city. This is the capital city of my country, and it was my first time in a big city, living alone. Basically didn't have any family member around. Most of my friends were not even in this city. So I was basically alone when I moved in. So there was no relative, there was basically no one to help me navigate this new big city. So I thought to myself, well, the smartest thing to do when you are new in a new city is to try and make some friends. I hope the rain noise is not getting into my mic because it's currently raining, but I'll try to be as audible as possible. So basically, when I moved into the city newly, I thought to myself that the first wisest thing to do is to try to basically make friends, so that I can have people that I can rely on and have a community that I can rely on whenever I need it. And we all know nobody can live without a community. It would have been miserable. So that was my first strategy, right? So everywhere I went to and everyone that I meet, I always had that at the back of my mindset that, okay, this could potentially be a friend. So basically, my energy was open, to the possibility of being friends with every person that I met. Also, around that period that I newly moved in, there was this national security news that was going on around back then. So around that time, with the whole security issue that was going on, I had to, opt for moving around with Uber instead of going on taxis and public buses. So I decided to opt for the Uber and Bolt option because I felt that would be much more safer. So I decided to settle for an Uber, which I wouldn't even call it settling. It wasn't convenient for me because it was really expensive. And at that time of my life, I was looking to save money because I also didn't have a job yet. So that was why I had to stick with, getting an Uber driver. So when I tried Uber and I got the first driver that was to take me somewhere, I think I was going to a bank then. Oh, so the guy who was my driver, who was the first person I ordered, so he kind of became the main go-to driver after that, first time patronage, right? So whenever I needed to go somewhere, I would call him and he would take me there and he would bring me back home and I would pay him. So it was a service thing. But now here is where the nice girl mentality or mindset kind of came in. So yeah, it was okay that I wanted to make friends. It was okay that I was open to being friends with everyone. But because I wasn't tapped into my dark femininity, I thought that it was okay to be friends with virtually everyone who was nice and kind to me. So the Uber guy was nice and kind. He was easy to talk to. This guy was, you could tell that he was way older than me. He was very respectful. He was also very kind. He was generous. He was even telling me, like different places in the city, which I didn't know. So, and with time, I got a little too familiar with the guy, I would say. Like, I made myself a bit too familiar, I think. And one thing with men is that when a particular, not just men, even women, like when you've mastered your environment for a number of years, you get so used to your environment that whenever someone new comes around and they're asking certain questions, and you listen to those questions, you're like, huh, for this person to be asking this kind of question, you have got to be new here. Like, so in my country, they call them JJC, Jolly Just Come, new to the hood, new to the block. So they don't know what's up. They don't know all the nitty gritty about the block, right? So they're new. And it's usually a characteristic that people can spot right on. So us nice girls, we don't know that because we're so naive, right? We don't know that. So for me, I was open, I was overly nice to this person. And I remember there was a particular time I needed to go shopping for some things for my house. But at some point, like after I got those things and we turned back to start going home, and my home was very far from, the market where I got all the things I needed to get. So while we were going home, while this driver was driving me home, he later said that he was feeling kind of dizzy, and a bit weak. So he now asked if we could stop by a cafe or something so that he could eat. And, I was concerned for him and I was asking, oh, why are you weak? I hope all is well. Just being nice, a normal, nice and concerned individual. And he was like, well, he hasn't eaten all day. He's been going from one ride to another. So he hasn't really rested all day. So I kind of understood and I agreed to him to stop by a cafe and, eat something.
What's so crazy about this is at this time of the ride, it was literally morning. I ordered the ride in the morning, you guys. Anyways, I digress.
And then we'll continue riding from there. Now, listen very carefully to this story. I'm going to point out the mistakes that I did in this story. So I followed him to the cafe. We got to the cafe. He was able to get something to eat. So I also got something. I just used the opportunity to get something for myself to eat as well. And while I was there, while he was replenishing himself and eating and all of that, he started to kind of, unwind. And, he was telling stories about himself, about his work and this other business that he has. And, I was there, I was like listening to him. I was like, oh, I was showing interest. I was asking questions, because, hashtag, we're trying to be friends. I'm looking to be nice. Like I don't have friends. So I'm in my nice era. I have to be nice. So that was the mindset that I was running with. So I was listening to all his stories. I was taking genuine interest. And as he was saying, I was asking him more questions. Here comes the thunder. I don't like thunder, guys. I don't like the thunder. But I'm going to try and pretend that I didn't just see the lightning. So I was basically listening to this guy, right? I was listening to everything he was saying. So at some point when we were done talking, and he felt replenished and strong. I didn't even rush him. I just allowed him to lead. So when he said, okay, he felt rested now, so he decided, okay, let's continue with the ride so that he would take me home and continue working. Remember, I told you guys it was a bit of a long distance from the place where I went to shop to my house. So when we got to my house, when he dropped me off at the gate, I wanted to offer him water. And I think that day it was about to rain or something. I can't remember. But for some reason, I think I allowed him to walk into my apartment. So he came into my apartment and he stood right in front of the door. So the first thing I went in to get was the water. So I just got him a bottle of water. So while he was drinking, we're still kind of in the chatty mood. We're still in the chatty mood, right? So he was still, chatting about some things while he was drinking the water. And when he finished drinking the water, he did something that kind of took me aback. It kind of shocked me what he did. It really, really, really shocked me what he did. So after he drank the water and he dropped the bottle, this guy grabbed my waist and he tried to kiss me. And his lips were so close to my face. And in the moment when I realized what was going on or what was about to happen, I kind of just put my hands in the middle to stop him from, continue any further. And I was like, what are you doing? And he was like, oh, he's sorry. He just likes me and stuff like that. And I was like, man, man. It wasn't funny. It wasn't funny in the moment. It wasn't funny because, anyways, after he said all of that, I was like, I just wanted to offer you water. You've had your water, so please let me kindly escort you out. So he was like, yeah, okay. So he got back on his boots and he was walking right in front of me. I was walking him out the gate to ensure that he goes outside of the gate. So after I walked him out, I forgot that I hadn't paid him. And to be honest, because that day had been quite a very chatty day, very friendly day, it was a day of, me kind of giving him some extra graces that I usually wouldn't, like accept when I'm paying for a service or when I am asking for a service, right? So this guy, when I escorted him outside of the gate and he got into his car, and it looked like he nearly forgot. Oh, no, no, it was actually myself. I nearly forgot, right? So he dropped me in the car. Sorry, he got into the car, and I was about walking back into the compound. And then I hear him call my name. And I opened the gate, and, so I looked back, and he was like, I haven't paid him. And I was like, okay. I nearly forgot that I was supposed to pay this guy because the entire time, I think my brain had been convinced that this was a friend. Like this is like we were having a good time, right? I asked him how much, so he told me the price. It was quite a high price, and it was even higher than what was even written on the app. And I think it was because of those extra time that we took on the ride. It was because of that extra time that he added more money. I did not even argue because at that point I just wanted him out of my compound. So I just looked at him, then he looked at me. Then I think he could tell that, okay, I think she feels that the price is much. Then he reduced it to about 90% of the original price that he called. So he said, if you have, this amount, right, you can bring it. So that was about 90%. So I decided to give him the 90%. So after I paid him, he collected the money and then he drove off. And when I got back into my house that day, I was thinking to myself, what just happened? What was that? It was then I realized that This guy, I was nice to this guy, right? I hired you for your service, and while you were in service, you complained of something which was quite unprofessional. Now, at that point, when where he complained that he was feeling weak and somehow, right? The human thing to do is, of course, allow him to eat something, allow him to get something. It doesn't mean to necessarily like give him time to eat at a cafe, because obviously anyone going to work should know that you are supposed to eat before even going out to work. You're not supposed like you're supposed to be the one to create your eating time. You're not supposed to be using someone else's service time to eat. But I didn't only allow this guy to get something to eat, I even allowed him to stay in a cafe, to get a cafe and eat comfortably and take his time, eat, digest his food, and rest before he got back on the ride. Now, at that point, if I had been feeling so generous, so, in the mood to be nice and all of that, the easy thing I could have done was get another ride to take me home while he goes to the cafe. But no, I instead follow him to the cafe. What was I thinking? I don't know. Was I trying to be a guardian angel or something? I don't know. I was just in my nice mindset. I just felt it won't be nice if I just, cancel the ride because, he's feeling hungry and all of that. Like, that won't be nice. But that was what I was thinking. I thought it was nice for me to just wait for this guy, to be patient with this guy, let him eat and get his strength back. Then I can go back home. After all, it's just home I'm going to, right? The ideal thing, the dark feminine thing I should have done was at least get another ride to take me back. But no, I stayed in the cafe. And while I was there listening to his stories, showing interest in his story and his personal life, it was reinforcing this idea in his mind that I am so innocent and so simple, right? And, in my mind, I thought I was being nice. I thought I was being a kind person. And at the very least, this person would not, treat me somehow, want to use me or insult me or disrespect me or dishonor me in any manner. And for him to bring me home, and even after I offered him water, after the whole patience and all of that, trying to kiss me, probably hoping that that kiss was going to lead into something deeper and then probably lead to sex, or we start a relationship like that or something. I do not know. But for him to think that that was okay, that he could kiss me and get away with it, was the height of it all. And that has just been the sum of, how I wouldn't say all, but a lot of my relationship with trying to be friendly without any basis with men. That is how it tends to end up when you're a nice girl. That is just, I'm sure a lot of people who have been nice girls can relate to this. Like, when you get to that point, they just want to use you and stuff like that. So in that moment, I realized that I had really fucked up. I really, really fucked up. Now, what is the dark feminine story that I used to counter that nice girl mindset? That mindset of, if I am first nice to people, if I first show niceness or kindness to people, they would also be kind to me in return. Now, the dark feminine story that I later developed to counter and to deprogram that nice girl mindset was, I can be kind to people and respectful towards people until they have proven themselves otherwise. Until they have proven themselves otherwise. And I can also be kind to people without expecting anything from them in return. Like, kindness is not niceness. When you're nice, you are exercising kindness towards people because you're expecting that they would also give you the same kindness. And that was niceness. And that is a toxic feminine mentality. So the dark feminine mindset to deprogram this is to recognize that it is okay. You can show kindness to people, but never expect them to show it back to you in return. When you act that way, when you show up that way, you are taking your power in your own hands rather than giving it to them. and thinking that the kindness you're hoping to get, the friends you're hoping to get, it's more in their hands than it is in my own hands. And I can also be kind to people without expecting them to be kind to me in return. That is, in fact, the definition of kindness. So I'm being kind because I have kindness within me. So it's not because I am trying to manipulate a situation and hoping that, oh, if I show niceness to you, you would be nice or you would be kind to me. That is manipulation. That is a quietly toxic feminine trait. And that was the mindset that I was operating in back then, right? But no more. No more. So the second way to deprogram the nice girl mentality or the nice girl mindset is through visualization and affirmation anchors. This point is kind of very simple and straight to the point. So visualization and affirmations. I know that this is something that a lot of people do not believe in, but trust me, in my journey of healing, visualization and affirmation has really been a big part of helping me to remold and reinforce my new identity, because that is basically what healing is about. So, like I said, the nice girl mentality is a mentality that emanates from a toxic frequency. So that is when you're still in your unhealed version. So when you're trying to heal, like in the former point, for instance, I was talking about developing a new dark feminine story that counters your nice girl story, right? So you're supposed to have that story, right? That dark feminine story for every nice girl mindset that you have. And so when it comes to the point of visualization and affirmation, this is the point where you bring all of that dark feminine new story that you have developed for different aspects of your nice girl mentality or nice girl mindset. You bring them all together, preferably in a written form, and you read them like a law. You meditate on them every day. If you can do it night and day, do it night and day. I did my night and day. So you read them, you meditate on them, visualize yourself showing up as that person. Do it religiously, like a ritual until it becomes a part of your consciousness. The whole point of visualizing and affirming is so that your brain can get used to that programming, right? Because whew, I had to study a little bit of neuroscience and a little bit of psychology. And something that I learned in my time of studying those fields is that the brain, especially in this time and age, like one of the things that you people need to understand is that the time and age we live in, you see this device, the phone, the television, your laptops, the internet, basically. They are designed to constantly keep programming us. They are constantly programming us. We are constantly being programmed. And we're not programmed for positive things. We're not programmed or to thrive, to succeed in anything that we're doing. So that is why if you're trying to step into a new consciousness or you're trying to, heal and step into a new identity, you need to be very, very intentional about the images, the thoughts that you're feeding yourself with. And that is where visualization and affirmations comes in. So that is why you have to literally write out all those dark feminine new story that you have formed in order to counter your old nice girl stories. Now, those dark feminine stories that you have now formed, you need to reaffirm it to yourself each time you catch yourself operating in your nice girl mindset, in your nice girl consciousness, right? So when you visualize and you affirm this constantly, even when you're not necessarily in that problem, right, your brain will begin to accept it as a new programming, as a part of your identity. It becomes like a default mentality, a default principle to you with time. So that is basically what it is. So the third way to deprogram the nice girl mindset is to engage regularly in soul nourishing rituals like skincare routines, maintenance routines, massages, etc. Whatever soul care is to you, whatever the practice of soul care entails to you, engage in them regularly. Why is this important? You need to understand that the nice girl identity that you're currently operating in, it did not just come to you naturally. It didn't just happen out of chance. It happened because it was born from a soul wound that you carry. It was born from a particular soul wound, a trauma that you carry. And that trauma gave birth to the nice girl mentality as a form of survival. That is you being in a survival state. So the nice girl mentality, it is not a natural state. It is not a default state that just comes out of nowhere. No, that is a form of defense and a form of survival tactic for a lot of people. And, that mentality was also born from a lack. That wound that caused the mentality, that gave birth to that mentality, that wound was instilled upon you as a result of a lack of care. A failure, of maybe a parent or both your parents in childhood to fulfill a certain need that you needed as a child growing up. So that was how that wound was born. So there was a failure of nurturing, a failure of care, a certain care that you needed growing up that you did not get from your parents. So that wound came about as a result of not receiving that care, that nourishment that you needed growing up. And that was how the wound was able to develop into a nice girl mentality, where you now basically have to lay yourself down for everyone else to step on, where you have to be a people pleaser so that people can give you favors and people will not hurt you in this life. And unfortunately, that is not the reality of things. That is not how people respond, right? So that is not how they respond to you, which is why you're watching this video right now. So when you engage in regular soul nourishing activities or rituals, what you're essentially doing is you're essentially giving yourself the love, the affection, the attention that you needed as a child growing up. Take, for instance, for me, one of my soul nourishing rituals is skincare. There was a time in my life, not very long ago, I didn't care about skincare. I didn't have a skincare routine. I didn't have a maintenance routine. I didn't care about massages or any of that. I didn't care about anything. That was just basic, living my life basic and simple, right? But, but I will tell you guys this for a fact. When I started being more constant, more frequent with my skincare routine, my maintenance routine, and taking massages, when I started doing these things, guys, I started to feel good. Like for the first time, I started to feel good in my body. I used to have a lot of insecurities in my body, in my physical body, and even insecurities within my being. I used to feel unworthy of love, unworthy of, people caring for me. I used to just feel unworthy of all of those things. I was really, really insecure. But since I started frequently engaging in soul nourishing rituals, I feel love within me. I feel so much love within me. And honestly, girls, like one thing I can say is that this actually has a way of showing up in your aura. I had someone from church tell me one time that, you know, he's been observing me. He's been observing me for some time. And he sees that I'm someone that really, really takes care of myself. And he respects that about me. And, and I asked him, how can you tell? How did you know? He said, one just knows. Like you look like it. You really, really look like it. The way you walk, the way you take your time to walk, the way you talk, the way you carry yourself, the way you treat yourself, the way you dress. And it was just so crazy to me. I was like, So people can notice these things. And yeah, people can notice these things. I am telling you, like, I get a lot of compliments about, my skin, like how good I look. That, I just get a lot of compliments and stares, not just from people older than me or people my age, even kids, even children younger would tell me, you look, you look good. And whenever they say that, they're not always talking about what I'm wearing, but more like how I appear, like my appearance and all of that. And that, I won't lie, it does actually feel good. But even more so, it confirms that, self care, it has a way of showing up in your aura. Like if you're someone who takes care of yourself, it has a way of showing up. And it is a beautiful thing. And if it is showing up, it means the energy is already surrounding you. And when that energy is already surrounding you, it's already transforming how you see yourself. I used to really, be so extra, extra, extra grateful whenever someone does something nice to me, right? Because I grew up being one of those people who, and this was actually one of my, I'll say like one of my toxic traits from, previous childhood trauma and all of that. I never ask for things. I never ask for things because I don't expect things from people. But I later realized that I don't ask for things because I genuinely believe deep down that I do not deserve such special treatment from people. Like I don't deserve, people taking their time to help me or stuff like that. And honestly, since I have been very dedicated to giving myself all the love that I need, it has changed my perspective. So I go out in the world, not necessarily expecting this from people, but I just show up like that as, okay, this is me, this is how I treat myself. And people are starting to learn that. And people are beginning to treat me that way because they see me show up. They say that, oh, I treat myself this way. So people respect me even more just because of treating myself well. They respect me even more. I didn't have to communicate that to them. Like they get it. So they respect you even more. Girl, you need to make it a goal to give yourself all the care and all the self care and all the love that you wish you had received. When you make soul care a constant ritual in your life, I guarantee you, the frequency of that soul care, it has a way of impacting your aura, and people can sense that. And when they sense that, they want to treat you well because they see that you are someone who is well treated from where you come out from, right? So when you give off this energy of you don't have enough, when you give off this energy of I have to make friends, I have to be nice, people just want to kind of devour you, like as they would a sheep. Because a sheep, like I said before, a sheep is is like an example of someone in her light feminine energy. So when people see a sheep is not interesting enough. It is not intimidating enough. So it's not interesting enough for people to look at and, admire or stuff like that. So when people see a sheep, there's only one thing that comes to their mind. So they look at a sheep and they either don't care about the sheep or they want to devour the sheep or they want to use the sheep. So when I was given off that energy of, oh, I need friends, I don't have friends, I have to be nice to you because I'm a nice person and I don't want to, come off offensive or disrespectful and all of that. This guy saw me as a sheep, and all he wanted to do was to take advantage. All he wanted to do was to use me. Right? So that is all what sheeps are good for. But the moment you turn on that dark feminine energy, the moment you deprogram and abandon that nice girl mindset and you turn on your dark feminine mindset, you give yourself aggressively that love, that nurturing, that soul nurturing that you did not have growing up. It will show up in your aura. It will impact your aura and it will influence, it will literally say in people's faces, compose yourself. this is not a girl that you can take for granted. Like, this is not someone you can take for granted. And I know you guys know that there are people who you see whenever you go out in public, you just see some people and the way they look, you just know that you cannot bring stupidity close to this person's space. You look at this person and you just want to praise them, or you don't even want to go too close to them because you're afraid to stain their white. You know that, oh, if I don't have anything to give to this person, like I shouldn't even be standing close to the person. So that is the energy you give off when you give yourself that love, that self-care. All right. So in the next part of this video, we're going to be talking about masculine boundaries that you need to create in order to awaken your dark feminine energy. So stay tuned for that part of the video.